Simon, I know that you have a commitment to using your influence as the managing director of LSP, as a consultant, as a coach, working with leaders in organizations to positively impact the world's climate. You call it regenerative leadership. Tell us what you mean by regenerative leadership and why is this so personally important to you?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so for regenerative leadership to me is, I suppose at its biggest, it's creating the conditions where life can thrive.
Yeah.
And sadly, I just don't think we're in that place right now. I think we're still in, moving towards sustainability, perhaps, but in many ways still degenerating.
Mm-hmm.
The living systems that we depend on. And I think so for me, it's about, we really need to be repairing and regenerating the damage that we have caused. And I think that goes for us as, environmental and social. I think that goes for us as leaders. And so it's leading from a different place, a different mindset,
Mm-hmm.
a place where we really see ourselves as part of our one living system that we are inhabiting, and broaden our horizons as to what that means, and lead from a different place where we see all stakeholders as important and having intrinsic value.
Nice. Every time I talk with you, Simon, I hear your passion and commitment, and it's inspiring. How and why has this grabbed you personally?
Yeah, it's been quite a long time. I mean, I suppose if you trace it right back, it goes back to childhood and love of being on my uncle's farm, of being outdoors, and that connection with nature.
Yeah.
And there's always been something there that has really valued that. And then, over the course of, the last 30 odd years, that I've watched that decline and, seen those changes. I was in the army for a while as well. And, some of the places that I got to in the army were where social systems or democracy had broken down, and we're obviously living through that in many different ways right now.
Yeah.
So it's not only yes, the environment and our living planet, but absolutely social equity and fairness, and that inequality, I think, is part of the same question. So I'm seeing that, and there's been an evolution for me. There's been no big bang it's just been a growing awareness that, I really genuinely believe it's my generation's responsibility now, particularly to do something about this.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's taken a while to come to fruition, but we're in an emergency. That's the simple truth. So we need to act like we're in an emergency.
Yes, we are. And when you look at your definition of regenerative, Simon, just, all the things that could be addressed environmentally, socially, there's systemic change that needs to be made. It can feel overwhelming. And I'm sure many leaders listening get stopped by, I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. What would you say? Because I know you would love every leader listening to take on this mindset of, it's my responsibility to make sure my world, my sphere of influence, that we're taking care of each other, that we're taking care of our planet. Where do we start? Where do we look first? Or now?
I think first off for me, it's the belief that we can do something, and we can do something that's entirely positive. As you say, there's a lot of you feel the weight. You can feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, and that can feel overwhelming and very disabling.
Yeah.
I think so. For me, the belief that whoever we are and wherever we are, and this is why I think the leadership position is so important, because we can all be leaders, but we can have more influence. The belief that we can do something and that it will make a difference to us individually, our communities, and so I think that's the first part. And then I think the second part is working out what it is for you and your organization. If you're part of an organization, what's your purpose, and what is it that you can uniquely contribute right now to what we're facing. So
Lovely.
and get very, very specific, and find out some things that just start
Yeah.
one conversation at a time. Just ask some different questions. Hear from, I'm not sure how engaged everyone is in organizations on this topic. I'm not sure how often they're asked.
Yeah.
So I think there's latent opportunity in our organizations for great ideas.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Amy, the other thing, actually, I think on the positive side, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think this, if you're in a for-profit or a not-for-profit organization, I genuinely believe there's such an opportunity here, a business opportunity, as well as,
Yes.
what we can do, socially. I really think, it's underestimated,
Yeah.
the business opportunity. I think it's hugely exciting. We are living through one of the biggest transitions. It's the next industrial revolution. We're having to, find the new software for a new global way of working. It's a once in a multi-generational opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're only limited. Well, I never like saying that's too binary, by our way of thinking, and some way in our imagination and our habits.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we can look as well. Look at our habits, look at our assumptions that we're making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you started there, Simon, with our belief that we've got to have that belief, that
Mm.
mindset that we can, and that we are the ones
Mm.
to make a
Mm.
difference. And that's belief work can take some time to make sure that we
Yeah.
really have it ingrained in us, right? So I think
Yeah.
we're talking about more than, oh yeah, 2 seconds of I tell myself I can make a difference, right?
Yeah.
But really looking at what are some of the assumptions, positive, disempowering, that lie beneath those automatic thoughts that come to our heads, like, this is too overwhelming, I can't make a difference, I don't know where to start, I don't know enough about the topic, whatever
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
might be, and yeah. And when you talk about socially making a difference,
Mm.
people can get overly concerned about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're marching into uncharted territories at times, at least
Yeah.
personally with individuals, right?
Yeah.
I know I've worked with leaders who have, right, and it can be scary business.
No, that's a really good point, because I think, my personal experience of this transformation is that I went through a stage of thinking I needed to know the answers.
Mm,
And I think the reality of where we are now is that we don't know the answers, and we're not going to. So, I think, your emphasis on the word courage is so important, because this is, a bit of the leap into the unknown. And if you look at some of those bold organizations who have set, ambitious 2030, 40 and 50 net zero targets and things like that, they don't know how they're going to get there yet. They've got some ideas,
mm-hmm.
but they've jumped in and committed. And I think that's more of that, and collaboration, as well, is one, some of the things that can help us get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that mindset and that commitment
Mm.
up
Mm.
front. We don't know
Yeah.
how, but we are going to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
love it.
In fact, I was just looking. You probably can't see it, but I've got a Man on the Moon original paper
Okay.
framed behind me. On the day that the man, Neil Armstrong and colleagues stepped onto the moon, and I was just reflecting on that early. That, I mean, it's a it's a well-known story, but
Yeah.
there's something about that bold ambition
Yeah.
and I think a new story. I think that's the other thing that gets in our way. I think, we're running an old narrative,
Mm.
and we need a new and optimistic and exciting story that says this is possible. Back to that belief thing.
Yes. So we are going to talk more about how
Mm.
to step into this
Mm.
mindset and take action. But I want to let everybody know today that my guest is Simon Bailey. He's the managing director of LSP Leadership. In leading LSP Leadership, he sees clearly the necessity to work with leaders and their organizations to bring about an accelerated transition towards the sustainable enterprise. This is driven by his personal purpose to help people and places be better than they are today, and by his observations that people in the organizations that they work in are, in the main, slow to recognize the commercial and personal opportunities that this transition to a sustainable economy presents. As a coach, his approach is intuitive, challenging, and deeply caring for his clients and what they are seeking to achieve. Simon coaches in multinational organizations, multi-sector SMEs, and with individual leaders in transition. Prior to joining LSP Leadership in 2003, Simon served in the Army as an infantry officer, leading operations and training in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. He is a member of the Institute of Directors with a diploma in company direction, working towards chartered directorship. He has an MBA from the Schoolidge School of Business, York University in Toronto, and is an associate member of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. Thank you so much for being here today, Simon, to talk about this important topic.
Yeah, a real pleasure, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we've talked some about the belief, and then you said, what is it in your organization that you can do? Right? What is going to be your unique way to take action? Can you give us some examples, Simon? What have you seen leaders shift and do?
I think, leadership as, my military experience said that, you need to not be prepared to ask people to do something you're not prepared to do yourself.
Okay.
And so we've looked hard at ourselves as we're a small but global presence in our business of about 60 people. And so one of the first things we did was engage with our coaches and ask the question about, what's our role here? Are we being complicit in the current system of coaching and working with people while the ship is burning, or the whatever the analogy might be.
Yeah.
So we've brought different questions into our coaching. We've brought different conversations into our coaching in our work with clients. Questions like, what is society asking of you right now, and what can you uniquely contribute? And just helping executives think in a different way. So, and that'd be one example. But going back to the sort of not, doing this yourself, we're in the process of buying some land, a small piece of land as a company. And so our aim is to become net positive in terms of carbon and in terms of biodiversity.
Lovely.
And so we can, both offset our current emissions and be positive and sell some of those carbon credits to others as well. I think there's a number of small things that you can do by just thinking differently. And what's our responsibility here?
Nice.
Yeah. And the other thing, Amy, we've done is, we've changed our articles of association as a business. So I don't know if you're familiar with the B Corporation movement, the B Corp movement. And so we changed our articles of association to directly reflect, their articles, which says that you consider every stakeholder in your decision making, not just the shareholder. And then we thought, okay, so there's those are all good steps in the right direction. And then we came across this wonderful organization called 1% for the Planet. And so we've joined 1% for the Planet a couple of years ago now. And you make a donation, 1% of your turnover annually, you commit to give that to a charity or charities of your choice. And we work with, we've been working with the Marine Conservation Society to work with their leadership team and their management team to help them increase their impact.
Lovely.
As part of that 1% membership. So there's lots of different things. I think you just need to decide what it is for you, that where you want to put your effort. And there's lots more we could be doing. So I hate, one of my big values is humility, and I even saying all that stuff out, you think, and there's loads more we can be doing as well.
Yes, and you're in action. We'll get links to all of those sites into the show notes. B Corp, 1% for the Planet, Marine Conservation Society. Yeah, and I mean, and that's lovely, right? Like those are all the things that you're doing as the managing director of LSP.
Yeah.
What have you seen when you and others, other associates, are asking these coaching questions of leaders, right? What's the society asking of you? What is the opportunity inside of your organization, right? What are you passionate about shifting and repairing? What have you seen leaders take on?
Yeah, one company we're working with, so I'm working with the managing director, and he's intuitively knows something needs to change, and we've been having these conversations, and they're a design business, and so he's gone to his supply chain. He's gone to the factories that make his goods, and he's asking of them different questions, and they're responding and changing what they're doing. They're looking at using less component parts. They're looking at alternatives to some of them. In this case, small bits that could come off and get washed into the water course. So it just opens up a whole new conversation. So that would be one example.
Oh, that's exciting. I get inspired by that, right? If you think, if you've got a set of vendors, or a set of customers, like how you can start to have a different conversation and change some ways that you're doing business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, part of the other thing that we do business-wise is to facilitate strategy for some clients. And so, that what is society asking of you question brought a whole different element into this organization strategy, which wouldn't have been there had the question not been asked. So again, they're thinking about their stakeholders in a different way, how they could create different value for different people who previously were not really on the radar. And so, that's just the power of the question is really phenomenal. So that would be another example.
Yeah. So I'm hearing what is society of asking of you, and also this idea of consider how you can serve every stakeholder. That seems like something that a leader, no matter where they are positioned, could be asking themselves, right? Who are all the stakeholders? Who are all the possible stakeholders?
Yeah.
As the communities that we touch, are all of those stakeholders represented in our thinking and our planning?
Yeah, completely. I think, if you think about, you might think about the footprint around an office or a factory that you're directly involved in, but then the community that your employees come from, wherever that is, of course, all of the stakeholders in your supply chain, human and non-human stakeholders in your supply chain, and then all your clients further down the value chain. How are they using your product? What are they saying about it? And how are you creating value for them that's beyond the transitory?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's so much. I think the other element I'm excited about is the innovation this unlocks as
Ah,
well, because there's some wonderful, if you think about this brings in the circular economy and rethinking design. Um, there's a whole shift in business model that's underway in many, many sectors, and it just can't come fast enough.
yes, yes. Yeah, I'm as you're talking through that, I get more excited about just thinking about our stakeholders as an
Mm,
access point to what is the unique value that we can create, right? What are
mm,
the unique actions? What are the ways that we can shift
mm,
what's happening on
mm.
our planet to be more regenerative? And
Yeah,
gosh, it keeps coming back to mindset as
it
we're
does.
talking, Simon. I mean, because I'm also struck right now that
Mm,
I think that for too long we have thought, oh, sustainability, that's something that the sustainability group does, right? Or environmental impact, well, that's that health and safety and environment person. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes in a big entity, it was one person,
yeah,
right? Rather
yeah.
than looking at it as this is all of our jobs. We all need to be involved in
Absolutely agree.
impacting our world in the way that we want.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I think,
yeah, go ahead, Simon.
yeah, go ahead. No, I think you're right. I think that's where the opportunity is in organisations to, we know engagement in many organisations low. We keep being told that, and I think that is one of the opportunities. It's certainly a talent. If you're looking from an HR lens, it's an attraction. Talent wants to work in organisations who are clear about what they're doing and what they're about and how they go about it, and they're really attracted to that culture that's positive, progressive, and they won't go and work in organisations that aren't. And that's the reality on the ground now. So you're right. It's gone beyond that. That's now an HRO responsibility. It's a CFO responsibility because that's hitting the bottom line as a CEO and a board and all of that. And I think we've moved from why do we need to do this to a how, and how do we do it well? How do we adapt our thinking and how we are as leaders, and how do we do it fast? Because
Yeah,
the other side of it, you go from kind of doing less harm to where we're suggesting that the opportunity is, which is to rebuild, to regenerate.
yeah,
Um, but regulation is also that's coming fast. It's here. It's here for public companies, and it's only going to become more reporting of many different aspects.
yeah,
Um, so there's I suppose at bluntest for leaders, are we going to be here in 5 years' time if we don't change? That's the risk and the threat
yep,
at one level, and then the opportunity. The other side is how do we win and keep our current clients and new clients, whoever they might be, and really engage more broadly. And that's I have huge empathy for leaders though in this situation, because this is is it unprecedented? Maybe what they're being asked to do with huge pressure.
yeah,
But we hear that that's what people want. If you look at some of the surveys, the Edelman Trust Barometer, they want business and organizational leaders to speak out on social inequality, the climate, and they want them to be doing more.
yeah.
So there's kind of permission there, but at the same time, the old system, of shareholder returns and all of that, that's still there, and that's the tension. I know, many leaders are really feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you're speaking to here, Simon, because I think a lot of folks today just feel pressure out of there's supply chain issues. People's
Yeah,
their plates are really full. You know, leaders might be listening to this and think, "Oh my gosh, I am just trying to keep the lights on and juggle all the balls that are coming my way and not drop any that are too critical and too critical of timing."
yeah,
Um, how can I talk about being regenerative here? How can I be proactive, so to speak,
yeah,
or think in new ways, and add new dimensions to what we're doing when we're busy?
yeah,
And I think you're saying that now is exactly the time. I
yeah,
mean, people are leaving their jobs in droves because we want meaning in our work.
yeah,
We want to feel like what we're doing matters,
yeah.
and that one of those balls that we're holding up is actually going to make a difference to our planet, to stakeholders in our system.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a in some ways it's a forced choice between do we do this or do we stick with what we know. I think the choice is we know the direction of travel we need to go in. How much commitment do we feel? How bold are we willing to be? How much risk? How much do what I think it really comes down to is how much do we really care, and how connected are we to what really matters to us and what really matters to our stakeholders. And I think where the evidence of leaders who have acted so far is that there's a deep commitment, and they feel that personally, that at an individual level, and they've gone through their own sort of inner work and that belief work, and there's that conviction there,
Yeah.
and that leads into action. And so I think that's the direction of travel. And I think what when we were talking earlier about kind of my aim for our conversation today,
Yeah.
it would be to kind of put a marker down for everyone and to say, come on, how do we challenge ourselves? How do we be bolder?
Yeah.
And to your point about mindset, I think let's really critically examine the assumptions that we are resting our decisions on and see whether those are really fit for where we are right now. Because my personal experience is that many of them are not, and the situation has changed. As we were saying, we have this urgency to act.
Yeah.
So we need to be really mindful, conscious of that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's what it. I think that's what it really comes down to for me.
Yeah. Like, how much do we care? Do you care?
Yeah,
Right? Each
yeah,
each person listening. Now, Simon, I feel like we
yeah,
don't have to look far to see examples of needed change in our world. Uh,
yeah,
in yeah, in our climate and in the inequalities that we experience and observe every day. But is there a place where you turn people to, how do I want to say, like, maybe get some of that climate information in their face? Is there a good source of information, like, here you need to go look here because you'll see how critical the situation is for our climate,
mm,
for our world?
mm. Yeah. Crikey, that's a great question. I think this is another of the challenges. Actually, there are so many sources of information that where do you go to trust this? I mean, if you want the overall view, the IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change, their most recent report,
Okay, great.
that's great because from that comes science-based targets. I think that's another organization which is key. There's a number of reporting organizations out there in terms of how you can look to measure and report this. It'll be different in some respects for some different sectors. Um, and those are all external, sources of information. And I often think, I often find myself looking around for those sources of information, becoming overwhelmed, and then I don't know what's what very easily.
Mhm.
And what I've learned is to turn internally and trust what feels intuitively right to me, that I know something dramatic needs to change in how we're operating and how we're leading.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some great external sources there, and I
Yeah.
think working with the leadership team to ask ourselves those questions.
Lovely. Yeah.
I think that's the best place to start, and then you can get into, there's plenty of people out there who do materiality surveys for you and calculate your carbon, and look for all of that stuff. The technical side of
Yeah.
climate change and your emissions and all of that, and so I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
relatively easy to find.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No, yeah, I love that you keep turning us towards where do I want to have an impact? What's important to me, given
Yeah.
my organization and my values and my skills and who I touch, right? What's the most important work to do? Yeah, I guess I was thinking from
Mm,
like I know you want to be a catalyst, right? And
yeah.
challenge folks
Yeah.
and create change. And I guess I was coming at that question from the idea that sometimes we need to see the stark reality in our faces, right?
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
we keep going the way that we're going, with how we're using our resources, this is what's going to happen to our
Yeah.
planet, right? It's a bleak situation,
Yeah.
folks, right? And to see that, to remind us, but then
Mm,
your point is what's really going to sustain action in
yeah. Yeah.
folks, right? If
Yeah.
we're tapping
Yeah.
into what's important to us, where we're
Yeah.
passionate about making a mark.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, actually. So I think what has changed over the last 4 or 5 years, those external indicators, now I think about it, they've been quite marked. So, George Floyd, um,
Yeah.
fires in Australia, Greta, COP26, um, floods in Germany. There has been enough
Yeah.
evidence, just on the news for us to see that even the most skeptical, organizations of people I speak to, this is the evidence is clear and compelling. For me, it's clear and compelling. Whichever marker you want to, whether it's biodiversity, climate change, temperatures, ice flow melt, as well as our social systems,
Yeah.
it's there. The question for me is, how awake are we? How much are we paying attention to that and really deeply internalizing that as something that we are part of? We have been part of creating, particularly in the West.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that changed for me. It was that real sense of ownership for me, that and recognition and really deep listening to myself, that I've been part of this. I've enjoyed 20, 30 years of prosperity. I've taken it for granted. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. It's a leadership. If ever there was one, this is a leadership moment.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. For every leader
Mm,
to
yeah.
look, yeah,
Yeah.
to ask
Yeah.
themselves and
Yeah.
to believe that they can then make a difference.
Yeah.
What is that difference going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
all have different motivations for wanting to change. For some, it's deep love of nature. For others, it's family.
Yeah.
It's the prospect of grandchildren. And the generations that are not yet born. There's so much native wisdom that we are beginning to tap back into, that we've lost touch with. I've lost touch with
Mhm.
as well. Just to there's, but whatever it is for you as an individual,
Yeah.
That's the thing to pay attention to, and that's the kind of the glow and the spark.
Yeah.
And if we can fan that, and it becomes the flame inside us that leads to action, leads to the things we've been discussing, then
Yeah.
that's where it needs to start.
I started this conversation early on by asking, there's so much that can be
Yeah,
done. It's so
yeah,
overwhelming.
yeah.
And now I'm in a new place on that, Simon, just in this
Okay.
conversation, because there's so much, right? Find where you're interested, where you're passionate, where you have some skill and some knowledge to make a shift, and start your influence there,
Yeah, yeah,
and grow it from there, right? There's so much opportunity, so many different ways, like you said, the latent opportunity that's there,
yeah,
right? And the
yeah.
business opportunity. I mean, it's not only for people's fulfillment,
Right.
right? But then creating the win-win-wins out in the marketplace.
That's a really good point. So the in my experience, it's the alignment between the personal fulfillment and if you're working in an organizational setting, what the organization can then do, and then the impact you can have. That's been my journey, working out what that alignment is. So when we found this bit of land, and I've always wanted to be a farmer. So I was looking for a piece
Okay.
of land. It
Okay.
now happens that we can sequester CO2 on the land. We're going to plant trees. So I get to do what I have always desired to do,
Okay,
would
great. Yeah.
love to do,
Yep.
and great. We get to contribute in that way. We get to engage some community and then some other people, and help them in the local community.
Right.
We go, bring some education, bring some children there, and explain what we're doing. Create some new business, because we'll bring in,
Yeah.
beekeepers and orchard and all of these other things. So it becomes regenerative at many different levels, as you said,
Yes.
with multiple stakeholders. And I think that's really the power of the regenerative agenda,
Yeah.
because it's planting the seed, and then it takes on its own journey without, when I'm gone,
Yeah.
if we've done it well, it will continue
Lives
and
on.
expand of its own accord with its own energy.
Exciting at so many levels. And I'm excited for
Yeah.
the farmer inside of you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. He's been somewhat idle and somewhat dormant for too many years. So yeah,
He's back.
yeah,
He's
he's
back,
back.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those of you out there, you might not want to be a farmer, but what's your version of this, right? What's your
Right.
version of
Exactly.
creating that win-win-win?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so many
Yeah.
opportunities, really, yeah, take the time, reflect, and choose yours. That's the call to action here today.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. Feel that. And all my colleagues at LSP, we're all driven by different things, and so the conversations we've had, and the ripples that have been created from our conversations have, people have gone off to cricket clubs to change things, local other sports that they're involved in, or gone and volunteered in community organizations. So many different, it doesn't matter, but whatever you're passionate about, wherever you want to take it, focus on that, and start small. Just see how it goes. The energy will multiply
Yeah.
and take you further. It's infectious.
Yes. You
Yeah.
can make a difference. What is society asking of you?
Yeah.
Start small and let it grow.
Yeah. I think so. I think
Lovely.
those are really good. I haven't looked at the principles of change for a while, but I think that's one of them somewhere. Small quick wins or something like that. I'm sure that's one of them. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And start with that mindset. And I love the personal question,
Mm.
right? Where is the work? Where is the work for you?
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Yes, that's right. What about you is unique, that you can uniquely contribute? and that, you know, the world is asking for.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for this conversation today. And thank you for this challenge, right? This challenge that I would love each and every one of us listening and participating in this conversation to step into.
Thanks, Amy. What a pleasure. Yeah, I've loved it.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Simon.
Thanks. Bye.